Supreme blow to centre in top court.
The ability of a company to influence the electoral process through political contributions is much higher when compared to that of an individual.
Illegal poll bond scheme scrapped. Poll bonds fail probity Agni Pariksha. Opposition hails historic justice.
आप सार्वजनिक करिए, पूरी जानकारी करिए कि 5200 करोड़ किसने दिया भारतीय जनता पार्टी को। उसकी एवज में उन कंपनीज को भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार ने क्या क्या उपकार किए उन कंपनीज पर।
Will this bring Swachh Chunav?
Electoral bonds are unconstitutional, violative of fundamental rights and voters' right to information, and they are hereby, therefore, scrapped. The scathing ruling by India's top court, the Supreme Court today, brings to an end a scheme for political funding that has been controversial and contested since its inception in 2018. In effect, today's verdict presents a major blow to the BJP, since it was the BJP government that pushed this scheme, argued strenuously to defend it, in favor of it, and then finally implemented it. First, let me tell you, viewer, how electoral bonds actually work or worked since they've now been scrapped by the Supreme Court. Now, electoral bonds are an instrument through which anyone can donate money to political parties. These bonds are sold in multiples of 1,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees, and 1 crore rupees. Now, these bonds can be purchased by any Indian citizen or entities incorporated in India, that is, corporate entities. The donor can purchase these bonds from authorized branches of the State Bank of India by paying the amount through a check or digitally, but not cash. Now, this purchased electoral bond can be given to the political party of their choice. The party then has a 15-day window to encash these bonds to fund their electoral expenses. Now, here's the clincher. Electoral bonds are completely anonymous. The bond does not carry the name of the buyer. The next question, who benefited the most from these electoral bonds between 2018 and now? Now, studies suggest that the ruling party, whosoever it might be, benefits the maximum from donations through electoral bonds because, well, they're in power and donors want to support the party that's in the throne. Of the 9,208 crore rupees in electoral bonds sold between 2018, the inception, and 2022, the BJP got over half, over 50%, 5,271 crore, followed far behind by the Congress at 952 crore, the Trinamool at 767 crore, and the Biju Janata Dal at 622 crore. So the BJP towers and was by far the biggest beneficiary of this scheme. Now comes the third question. How does the Supreme Court verdict impact what happens in the 2024 election campaign? Now, this is where things get really interesting, viewer. The Supreme Court has ordered that donor data, those who've bought these bonds and given them to political parties, must now be revealed by the State Bank of India and published by the Election Commission within the next 3 weeks. Once the data on these donations and the donors is published by the Election Commission, voters will finally know who has funded the political parties they are keen on voting for. Details of the donors, especially corporate donors, will be the first step towards determining whether corporate interests were kept above public interest in the formation of government policies as a quid pro quo. This is something that is constantly alleged of governments, especially the current one. Now, setting aside what parties have amassed so far, and I've shown you those numbers from electoral bonds, the Supreme Court crackdown today theoretically puts all parties on equal footing for the 2024 polls, with no party getting any further benefit from electoral bond scheme. But that doesn't account for how much these parties have already amassed, and we've just shown you how the BJP has benefited from this scheme far more than any other by virtue of being the party in power. Now, the Chief Justice of India had observed during his verdict today that the scheme does not provide a level playing field for all political parties. Let's be clear about one thing, viewer. Today's verdict no matter which way the BJP slices it, is an indictment of a BJP-pushed scheme for political funding. It's been controversial right from the start on the issue of transparency. There can be no two ways about that. While it is true that parties other than the BJP, like we just showed you, have benefited from electoral bonds to the tune of, more than 1,000 crores, including the Congress and the Trinamool, it is still nowhere close to how much the BJP has benefited from the inflow. Interestingly, other than the CPM, no other party took a principled or official call to refuse funds flowing into their parties via electoral bonds, even though they were against it and constantly questioned it. That raises questions about why they didn't. Some may see this as hypocrisy in light of parties like the Congress now claiming victory and Rahul Gandhi expressing principled victory over this verdict. But it is also true, viewer, that it is a Congress member who is one of the petitioners in the electoral bonds case that has seen a victory for them in the Supreme Court today. Never forget that. Now, with the scheme now scrapped, the question is, will donor data provide an explosive new chapter in transparency in what drives our political parties? In 3 weeks, we could actually know. Now I want to show you another number that shows you about undisclosed income in the coffers of political parties in light of what we've just heard from the Supreme Court and electoral bonds. Now, I'll take you through just some of the major parties, and this is financial year 21-22. The total income of the BJP, 1,917.12 crores. Of that, income from undisclosed sources accounts for 60.56%, which sounds like a lot, except if you compare it with the Trinamool, which had a total of 545.74 crores of income in that same period, the undisclosed income was accounting for 96.77%, which is staggeringly high. When you look at the Congress party's figures of that same financial year, 541.27 crore was the income, of which 71.84% came from undisclosed sources. The CPM had an income of 162.23 crores, in the same period. This is the only party, remember, that has refused any funding via electoral bonds. But even the CPM had 48.48% of its income coming in from undisclosed sources. NCP of Sharad Pawar, 75.84 crores of income, out of which 20.41 was from undisclosed sources. So that's just to give you a sense of what the transparency matrix currently looks like. I want to go across to India Today's legal eagle, Nalini, who has personally helped us and helped me understand this story as well. Nalini, the big question now is, we've put together and set out what this means, what the verdict has said, how it could impact the election going forward. I want to ask you, in 3 weeks from now, the donor data, Nalini, has to be published by the Election Commission. How is that going to work? And, what could be the result of that? That opens many, many cans of worms.
Well, absolutely, Shiv, and it's a big win, not just for the Indian democracy, but also for the transparency of free and fair election processes.
Yeah.
Because the Supreme Court could have stopped at the fact that SBI should not issue any further electoral bonds. But not only have they done that, they've also asked for all of the details of the donations that have been received so far to be put up on the Election Commission website, so that the voter, who is at the end of the day the deciding factor on who rules the country, should have a right to know where this political funding is coming from. And the idea behind this by the Supreme Court has been simple, that in a democracy, elections should be absolutely free and fair without any sort of influence on the ruling party or the party that is supposed to come in power. The manner in which this is now going to impact the 2024 polls, like you correctly pointed out, is that the voter is going to know who has donated how much amount to each political party. And not just that, if there are corporate entities, which there are several corporate entities that have donated to political parties, if there are any foreign entities that have a stake in an Indian-owned company that have donated to these political parties, then to what extent corporate interest has overridden the public interest by the ruling party. So lots to to watch out for in the days leading up to the 2024 polls. And on the 13th of March, once this data is revealed, it's going to be absolutely groundbreaking to see who has donated how much to each political party.
So are these going to be nervous moments for those big, big honcho donors then, Nalini? Because now it's out of their control. Their names will now be revealed in those lists.
Well, absolutely, Shiv, and it remains to be seen how the government deals with this, as to whether or not they'll challenge this by way of a review petition. Will they try and seek more time from the Supreme Court to put out this data? Because getting this data out in March, just ahead of the 2024 polls, and in case it's revealed that this funding either came from any foreign entities that have directly impacted the government policies, or whether there's been any quid pro quo, is directly going to impact who comes into power back in 2024.
And we'll be reporting that in a big way here on India Today. Thanks very much, Nalini, for helping us put this big story into perspective for our viewers all across the country and the world. That's it on 5 Live.